Brian, how are you today? Did you get any sleep?
Yeah, I mean, not as much sleep last night because we didn't play too well over there in Citi Field. So hopefully we'll get back on track tonight.
All right, you guys call up Gary Sanchez today. Why Sanchez? Why was he the first one of the young guys to come up?
Well, there's a direct path here. With Carlos obviously being traded, we have the opportunity now to bring Gary Sanchez in so he can do some catching and some. Today he'll DH, and Roman will catch Chad Green. So we're going to start easing him in and seeing what he's got. He's earned the right.
Brian, we got so much to talk to you about, so let's start with what we started the show with, the future of Alex Rodriguez. What is the plan for Alex going forward?
Well, right now, listen, he's in a position that's, it's a tough spot given the fact that he hasn't played well, and we've been getting opportunities elsewhere because of that, and September is going to be here, soon enough, so, we'll try to see if we can get through all aspects, if possible, between now and then. It's clearly a reduced role. I mean, but it wasn't too long ago, which was last year, that he was producing obviously at a high rate. So it's just one of those tough spots, and I got to give him props because. Listen, he has struggled, and therefore that's why the time has been reduced. But his attitude has been great. He's still been a team guy despite all that. He's been, he's providing value in terms of how he's going about his work, saying all the right things, and I know he's directing and assisting, like clubhouse leaders do. Him and Carlos have been, attempting to cultivate the younger players, and I know, for instance, like a Gary Sanchez who arrives today would benefit from picking Alex's brain. So, he's doing everything he can to put himself in a position to, when his name gets called again, at some point, to be successful, and at the same time, he's still being a good teammate to give himself of others, and it's time to try to help other people and root his teammates on why they're actually getting the shot. So it's not an easy circumstance, but there right now no plans to do anything but give some reps to other people and see where it takes us, and if some matchups show up or injuries hit, you might see him get back out there.
All right, no disrespect meant by this, Brian, but it seems like the Yankees are half pregnant with this because I'll tell you what Hal said. He was on with us yesterday. He said he still thinks this team has a chance to get to the playoffs. So if, in fact, this organization thinks they have a chance to get to the playoffs, how do you saddle your manager with a 24-man roster? If Alex isn't going to play against Steven Matz, a left-hander, he's never going to play, Brian, and he can't field and he can't run. So what's his usefulness to Girardi?
Well, again, I think if you looked around rosters around the games, first and foremost, you just have to flat out admit it's not easy to go ahead and eat, meaning release, that kind of money. It's not something you come to a quick decision on. You see players, and I don't want to name them because they're still playing, but there's players around the game that are on big contracts that have been well below average players now for many years, not just a year. Alex hit 33 home runs, I believe, off the top of my head last year, and so listen, this is a bigger media market and more attention, and there's certainly a tempest around what should be done, but all I can tell you is slow down a little bit, and here's the counter arguments to that there's a very large financial commitment through next year, a player of Alex's caliber that was productive as early as last year, although in August and September it wasn't there, but the results for the entire 2015 season were what they were. He was arguably the best producing DH in the game or in the American League. So, it's just one of those circumstances, and now he's being put in a position with sporadic play to try to get it going, which makes it maybe more difficult. So it's fair to ask why, and it's fair to understand why it's not a quick and rash decision that gets made at the same time, especially with September around the corner. So, if we at some point choose to do anything, that's our right at any time, at any place, in the future we can do things, but right now that's not something that's being done.
Now, because of the situation with his past and he was suspended for a year, some of his numbers are tainted, but I'm wondering, Brian, does the organization hold any value in him getting 700 home runs in a Yankee uniform? Because it's going to be hard for him to do it playing once a week.
Yeah, that's not something for me to speak to, only because those are things I don't get wrapped up into. That's why you don't see the '96 team is going to be honored on coming up, and I don't know what date it is, and it's a great thing, and I was here for it and stuff. But I won't be on the field. I don't get wrapped up in those situations. I stay away from all the the retired numbers, and so you're asking me about stuff that are not really about the any which way we can try to impact our win column, and that's really my whole focus. The rest of that stuff is celebratory and tremendous, and you can build marketing things around and momentum for and talk about, but to be honest, it's just not my world that I live in, so you'd just be asking the wrong guy.
Okay.
Obviously, the organization believes in Aaron Hicks. Are you disappointed with what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think he's a better player than this. He was a better player than this as early as last year, where I think he hit 11 home runs. He'd been optioned out, and then had a good strong 4 months, to finish with Minnesota. So it's in there. The talent's there, and he just obviously hasn't had the season that I would have anticipated or he would want. But that doesn't mean it's not in there. I've mentioned a name just for people to make sure they pause, because he's got some physical tools that are very special. And Jackie Bradley Jr. 2 years ago had a full season, 495 at-bats or plate appearances in the big leagues as an everyday player with the Red Sox, and hit 198. And then they followed it up last year, I think, hitting 238 with 200 to 300 plate appearances. There was like 250 to 300 plate appearances, more of a part-time situation. And he hit a little better, but he was a great defender, really athletic. And then this year he obviously was a starting outfielder and left fielder in the All-Star game. So someone that the Red Sox walked through fire with, someone that, they had patience. There was a lot of noise about trade him, never hitting the big leagues, the frustrations and the angst from, obviously all watching it, develop or not. And I can't promise you that we're going to have a Jackie Bradley story with Aaron Hicks, but I do think that, he's better than what he's shown. And, we have seen better production from him in the major leagues, obviously in Minnesota just as early as last year. So I just think it's still some untapped potential there, and he'll get opportunities to prove that over time. But there'll be competition with guys like Judge, amongst others, that we're going to come in here and say, why not me?
I was going to ask you about Judge. He comes back off the AAA DL yesterday. I believe he got a double and 3 at bats. So when is his ETA here in the Bronx?
I think sooner than later. As long as he's healthy, I think he's earned the right to, take a shot and start the growing pains process of Major League Baseball. He's an exciting talent, and I do think that someone that we're looking forward to seeing, how he looks here in the 2016 side of it at the Major League level. We've had a chance to see him in big league camp. We've had a chance to see him obviously push through the system, and he's accomplished everything. I think for the most part he needs to accomplish at every level. He's not a finished product, but I think that he's getting past what he needs to accomplish at the lower level, and it's now to see where he could stand up at this type of competition at the Major League level. So I think you'll see him sooner than later.
Is there one player, not just the guys that you traded for, Brian, but guys that are already within the system that you're looking forward to see the most, that you really believe in the most?
It's hard. You believe in a lot of these guys have huge ceilings, and and like every organization, you dream on those guys hitting those ceilings, and most of them don't. But I can't tell you that there's anyone more certain than the other. I mean, obviously, Greg Bird was a guy that last year, last spring training, not this spring, but last spring, I remember we had a conversation with our media, who's our best hitting prospect in the system, and as of last March, I said it was Greg Bird. Now we've lost that bat. People can forget about him. He's going to come back here into the mix going into next season, so he's a good quality bat. Gary Sanchez, we think, is a legitimate bat. And we just added, Clint Frazier, who's just starting his baptism at AAA with about 20, AAA at bats under his belt now, and he looks like he has a real nice high ceiling. And Aaron Judge we just spoke about. So we got a number of different guys, that we're excited about, and you're going to start seeing some of them integrated, sooner than later, and others will, continue their journey as well, and we'll cross-check the hell out of them and see, what their ETAs are. But they'll move themselves. The baseball, the one thing is the game will tell you more than anything else who's, that'll separate the men from the boys over time in each league, and they get promoted, and eventually they find their way here to the big leagues.
Yankees Senior Vice President and GM Brian Cashman joins us on the Michael Kay Show. Today, Gary Sanchez is the DH, and you've said you think he can hit up here. But do you envision him as being a full-time Major League catcher somewhere down the line? Is he good behind the plate, Brian?
Yes. Our catching coordinator, Josh Paul, is, I think, one of the best in the business. He's done a tremendous job with Gary. He obviously was signed as a catcher internationally. I was heavily a part of that, and he was bat first, defense second. Now he's someone that has, over the last two and a half seasons, have really dedicated himself to the defensive side, and yes, he is a major league catcher without question. He's got one of the best arms in the game. He's not Pudge Rodriguez, but I would say you'd grade him out a tick below that with that kind of arm strength. They don't run on him in AAA. When teams come in to play Scranton, he just by being in the lineup shuts down the opposing team running game. They just don't run on it because, and then when they do, he usually nails it. So he's got great arm strength, and he's just big. That's why I think people bet against him for as long as they did, because of his size. He's bigger than most catchers, and just like pitchers, that creates a little bit more mechanical stuff that you got to work through. And I think he's done a great job of doing that, and then putting himself in a position to be in a position now to be considered without a doubt a chance to be an everyday catcher in the big leagues. We think his ceiling is an everyday catcher in the big leagues with a chance to be a middle lineup bat, and that's pretty exciting stuff. But that's what the ceiling is. You got to prove it now over time.
Brian, do you agree with Hal that this team's still alive and can make the playoffs?
Well, I think what Hal's representing is the fact that where we sit in the standings. So even though we've lost some significant pieces, there's going to be opportunities for other people to show what they can do, and I think the remaining players that are here, mostly veteran, obviously, they have things they want to prove too. That maybe the start that we got off to, they had something to do with it also, and they can try to make up for it as well. So I think we all feel that. Just because a tough decision was made, but a right decision was made by what do you want to call it, selling off at the deadline. That doesn't mean that you can't compete to the best of your abilities and have the attitude of let's shock everybody and take a run at this thing regardless by putting forth our best effort. That's the one thing that this team has always done, regardless of the performance of being so inconsistent. The effort, the dedication, the pregame prep, the caring, that's all been there. The results just haven't followed, but that doesn't mean they can't follow over here the next 2 months.
Chad Green starts today instead of Ivan Nova, who you traded. So you choose Green over Severino. What was behind that choice, and do you guys now project Severino as a bullpen arm rather than a starter?
No, just Chad Green has been our best starter at AAA, including Severino. So he's, right now pushed himself in the pecking order. Sevy just hasn't had the year that he had hoped and we had hoped, but I think you're starting to see it come back around now. The stuff, he lost for a period of time his slider and his changeup for most of the time, and now I think he started getting back on track, and I think we've seen that in some of the short stints out of the bullpen. The slider is much sharper than it had been all year, but Chad Green has been our best pitcher at AAA, and he's been the ERA leader down there in the International League. So, when the next start was needed, who's our best starter, from the crop of young kids, it's been Chad Green in 2016, so he's earned that right.
Is this a long-term build, Brian? I know Yankee fans want to know that. You mentioned when you were talking to the print media, you'd like to build an uber team again, which you guys had in the 90s and 2000s. Is this going to be a long slog? Because with young kids, you never know and how fast it's going to come.
You never know. I mean, meaning the young kids, you never know. But our intention is not to have it be long term. I don't see why we can't. Listen, we're contending right now with a team that's been vastly inconsistent, that had trouble, that's had trouble scoring runs all year, that has gotten very little production from two of the three middle of the lineup bats all season, and yet we're in contention. And so. I don't see why, when Hal Steinbrenner represents or I represent, we're going to try, the rest of the way. That's why we acquired Warren. That's why we got Clippard in the deal, separately, to continue to compete and have pieces that can help us in 2016 as well as beyond. But with, when we traded a Beltran, we knew that part of the possibility by doing so, we had Gary Sanchez that could potentially step up, and let's see what he can do. It doesn't mean he can't swing the bat well right out of the gate. Doesn't mean he will. Doesn't mean he won't. And so we're not, per se, just going to go ahead and say, you know what, it doesn't matter the rest of the way. That's not how we're going to go our business. We think this all matters, and our guys' jobs as professionals, and they are, whether it's your manager, your coaching staff, or your players, is to go out to the best of your ability and succeed, whether it's with the bat in the hand or the ball in the hand. They're the individuals each time that control the outcome of the next play. So that's the attitude, whether you're lined up as an American League All-Star team or lined up with a team right after a trade deadline like we just had, where some of the big time, your best players or best assets went out the door.
Final thing, Brian, we get this all the time, and we spend half of our show most of the time defending Joe Girardi. Yankee fans, a lot of Yankee fans for some reason, don't think he does a good job. We do, but obviously you and Hal Steinbrenner are the final judges on that, and the rest of the organization. Do you think that Joe Girardi has done a good job?
I think Joe has, and I'm sure that the ones that don't, it's easier for them to pick the phone up and call your radio station, and the ones that don't,
yeah,
the ones that do think he's doing a good job don't want to bother calling the radio station, so because they don't feel like there's an axe to grind. So I'm sure there's a much larger population that would disagree with the personnel that are taking the time to call and vent. But I think Joe's doing a good job. I think he's doing the same job he's always done. He works hard, he prepares, and unfortunately this particular season didn't go the way any of us expected, and that's my responsibility first and foremost. And so, hey, the last 10 days were to try to acknowledge that and take what was a bad situation and make it better, and that's what we chose to do. And I don't think any of that reflects on Joe Girardi. So.
And to piggyback on that, Brian, part of our defense of Joe is that it's not all on him. When a caller says, why isn't Alex Rodriguez playing, or why is Alex batting fourth against this pitcher, those things aren't done solely by Joe, right? I mean, a lot of the things that he gets criticized for are organizational decisions. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, he controls the lineup, but listen. At the end of the day, players play their way, into more opportunities and play their way into less opportunities. So I think first the players, I would say players control the lineup more so than the manager, but the manager looks for the best places to play them, whether they're batting first versus ninth, and whether they go 7, 8 innings or they only go 5, and whether they got the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning depending on the personnel. So, listen, Joe's only going to be as good as the players I give him. And I've been here a long time, and I know that the teams that Joe Girardi has been able to manage are not anywhere close to the teams that Joe Torre were able to manage, and so the personnel, that Girardi has had, are, at times, it's just not the same. So I think there's a little bit of a hangover, I'm sure, from some of the teams that we were able to ride. If this is a horse analogy, I mean, for a while we were able to run out of Secretariat, and that's where we're trying to get back to. We haven't been able to do that of late, and it's my job to put us in the position to find as much talent as we possibly can that the manager can utilize to the best of his abilities. We thought, honestly, that this team on paper was better than last year's team, which was a playoff team, with the additions of Chapman and Hicks and Castro. I think our players felt the same way. It just didn't play that well, and so we've acknowledged that and made some necessary adjustments that hopefully make the future brighter, but that doesn't mean we're not going to compete in the present.
Brian, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks. Take care.